Good morning, Nate. Good morning, Facebook friends. I've been on vacation, so I'm a little remembering what I'm supposed to say up here. So I just got back from vacation. I got a picture here. Really restful. Went up to the UP, went hiking. I can tell you what it means now when it says easy, moderate, and hard. When it says trail, moderate, I can tell you what those things mean now. If you're a beginning hiker, it's really hard. So I can tell you what that's what I learned 12.6 miles later. So I went up north, and in case you don't know, my sister-in-law went. This is Cheryl over here. She's also my travel buddy. So this is our picture. I get to drive us, so that's always nice for me. I like to drive. And as we're driving, I swerved, or I was taking this picture while I was driving, and Cheryl lunges for the dash and the door. She's like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "No, why?" I'm like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Don't be Israel. Did you forget what I just did? I drove us through the mountains of Virginia in the fog and the rain at a whopping 40 miles an hour." I'm like, "How quickly you have forgotten my driving skills. You're just like Israel." And she's looking at me all weird, "What are you talking about, Amy?" Because it's all about trust. It's about trust. And it made me really want to talk about trust and taking risks. Because evidently Cheryl was taking a big risk with me in the car. But I think we're back to trust again. We're back to trust. But we forget those things, don't we? We can easily forget the things that God has done. Just like Israel would do. So who's seen the Ten Commandments, or who remembers that Israel? Good job, Donna. So yeah, God rescued Israel from Egypt. He parted the Red Sea for them. He parts the Red Sea and they escape slavery. And then he keeps doing miracles. He didn't just do one, he kept doing it. He made sure they had manna to eat. He made sure they had quail because they wanted meat. When they were thirsty, he provided water. And they were a really whiny people. They were very whiny. They would get something and then they're asking for more, and then they're getting something and then they're asking for more, and very forgetful people. And then, so that he's been rescued, he's taken them to the land of milk and honey. We're getting there. And so they send spies to go check it out. They're not quite ready to walk over there and just plant their tents. They need to see what's going on. So they send their spies over to find out, what kind of land is this? What's going on over there? This is the promised land. This is where God is bringing us to. I've taken you out of slavery. I'm bringing you home. So they send the spies over. The spies come back and they're like, "It is beautiful. There is food and it is rich, and look at this fruit it has. But the people there are really big. We cannot take them. We can't do this." Even though God had told them they could have it, even though this was the plan, God had parted the sea. He'd provided for them. They get there, and it's beautiful as God has promised, and they say, "We cannot beat them. They're huge." This is what they said after all of the miracles in Numbers 14. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, "If only we had died in Egypt or in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it have been better for us to go back to Egypt? And then they said, we should choose a leader. We should go back to Egypt. Go back to slavery? Go back to slavery because they could not take a risk. They could not trust God. But what it made me think of was that, were they ever really trusting God? Because in the back of their head, they had a plan. They're like, thanks, Nate. They were going to go back to Egypt. That was the plan. We'll do this as long as it's working out, but we need to have this backup plan. We're going to go back to Egypt because I don't think God is who he says he is. I need to have my own plan in place because I can't trust God. And that leads us, so that little story about Israel and their lack of trust and the backup plan that they needed to keep leads us to our one thing. Our one thing is take a risk. Give up the backup. The backup. Some people call it plan B. Some people call it contingency plans. But the backup is anything that you're hanging on to because God's not enough. It's keeping you from really trusting him. Now, I like to be in control of everything. I like having lots of backups. I like knowing what I'm going to do if this isn't going to work out. I need to know my escape plan. I need to know how I'm going to feel safe. And that keeps me from always trusting God, because I can't depend on him. If I have my own idea, my own backup, I can't trust God, and I'm not going to see him work in my life. I'm not going to have the strong faith that it takes to really see him and let him move in my life. Risks happen every day. Some people think of risks and they're thinking like these big, gigantic things. But in our lives today, our risks are things like who we associate with, the decisions that we make, the places that we go. But the risk is where we put ourselves out there, or we don't know what's going to happen. In my own faith, and by the way, a little trust is needed here, because just like Cheryl had to trust me, you guys are trusting me on the journey. We're going from the Old Testament today to the New, so I do need a little trust from you as well. So just like Israel isn't trusting, wasn't secure with God, in my own walk, the only thing that's really kept me going and falling really well, really gracefully I fall, very early on I heard a phrase, faith that can't be tested can't be trusted. If I don't take risks, I can't count on God. If I don't take a risk and put myself out there, do I really know he is who he is? And so I've kind of just always gone on that phrase, and then when I still don't want to do it, I'll ask myself, do I believe what I say I believe? I don't want to say I shame myself, but if I say God can do all these things, if I say God is who he is, can I act on that? And so it's not easy, because we're just peoples. But why do we, that sounds great, like taking risks and counting on God, but we want to do that for a reason. And that reason is, our next point, is taking risks brings me closer to God. Taking risks brings me closer to God. And I actually asked Mr. Frank, I'm sorry, I teach children, I call every adult Miss and Mr. It does seem a little strange. Facebook friends, I'm going to move for a minute. But I did ask Mr. Frank if he would like to read this for me. I like to get off the stage too.
1 Peter 1:7. These have come so that in proving your genuine faith of a greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by the fire, may result in a praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed.
This is the faith we want. Genuine faith, proven faith, strong faith, because that's what brings us closer to God. Wrong mic. All right, there we go. Okay, I'm back to what I think I know what I'm doing. All right, so our faith has to be genuine and proven. And we take the risks, but risks aren't always, again, the big things. It's what we do with our money. Is God going to provide for me? It's the relationships that we choose. Is God enough? Does God see me if I choose to do this? Am I seen? Am I heard? Because sometimes we hang on to jobs. We hang on to people. We hang on to doing things ourselves because we don't feel that he sees us or that he's going to be there for us. And Israel went through this entire cycle constantly of not trusting God, of wanting to do things themselves, of wanting to hang on to things because I can see this and I can touch this. I can see this and I can touch this, and I have it. And this backup is what's always going to take care of me instead of God. Israel was always in this rhythm of God is great, and then when it comes down to it, he is not. They were willing to go back to slavery. Israel just wasn't going to take that risk. Honestly, I'll tell you the truth. I haven't taken a big risk in a while. It's been a little while, and I feel that has probably hurt me a little bit in talking to God and knowing God. When I moved down here, I had to think about when was the last big risk I took. My old house, though small and humble, was owned. Like, I owned that house, and I had gotten it for less than 4 times of what it would have taken to replace it. I owned it. I can take care of it. I can maintain it. I can always afford it. I'm single. I don't have any bills here. And the idea that I might move here someday had definitely occurred to me. But again, security is nice. I can afford this. I can take care of it. I'm safe here. And then things happen like, oh, well, maybe I'm moving now. And then Shelley said, and then God was just working to where I would move down here and I would sell that. Like, I don't own what I have. I can't buy what I had anymore. Because again, it would cost over 4 times what I had paid for it. There's no replacing that little tiny house anymore. So I gave up that security, which I was all smiles about it, but inside I was like, because it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable to take a risk. It's not comfortable to let go of our backup plans. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what's going to take care of me. So I have been a risk taker, but recently I kind of realized I had not been taking risks, and I think that I was feeling distant from God. I wasn't feeling close to him. And when we talk about becoming close to God, that leads to something else. So if taking risks leads me closer to God, then we can also say, and the next slide is, our next thing is taking risks leads me to a transformed life. Because if I take a risk and I count on God, I give up my backup, I'm going to count on him, I'm going to depend on him, and I'm going to be closer to him. Well, it stands to reason that taking risks also leads me to a transformed life. Because when I am closer to God, I'm able to hear him, I'm able to see him, He's able to change me, move me, grow me, to live the transformed life that he has planned for me. I said we were going on a journey, and we are. So we've been talking about Israel. And Israel's a great doormat. Like, it's so easy to go to Israel and learn. Great doormat for me to open up with. But now I want to flip to the New Testament, and I want to look at Acts 12. Because I want to look at someone that I think took some risks. Israel wasn't able to take a lot of those risks, but here's someone who did, and we're in Acts 12. And a little background into this verse is that Peter, so we talk a lot about Paul. Who's heard of Peter? All right, so I know where we're at. Peter was arrested. We know Paul was arrested, so Peter's arrested, and he's in jail. And he's being guarded by like 4 squads of people. He's in chains, and all these people are in this house praying for him. So that's where we're at. The apostle is in jail. Everyone's praying for him. And I'm going to start reading in Acts 12. Because Peter did escape, by the way. Peter escapes. And then we go to, when this had dawned on him, Peter, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. Peter knocked at the outer entrance, and a servant named Rhoda came to answer the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was overjoyed. She ran back without opening it and exclaimed, "Peter's at the door." "You're out of your mind," they told her. When she kept insisting that it was so, they said, "It must be his angel." Who is Rhoda? Who's Rhoda? What about Rhoda? Rhoda is who I want to talk about. Not Peter today, but Rhoda. Rhoda's just a servant, which is actually a slave. It just translates to servant in the Bible. She's a slave. She's a slave going to the outer doors. So I'm thinking this is a big house. This is not a poor people's house because there's 2 entrances. What kind of risks was she taking? Because we're in the middle of the night. We know Peter's in jail. People are all there praying. And she's a slave who hears a knock at the door. It was a really dangerous time to be a Christian. They were arresting people. Peter's in jail. They're killing people. This isn't America. They don't need a warrant. They just go and take people. So this is a very dangerous time to be a Christian. And these people are gathered in the middle of the night praying because Peter's been arrested. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was a slave and I heard that door knock in the middle of the night, I don't think I'd go to it. I think I'm going to pretend to stay sleeping and let someone else try and get that door. Because I don't know what's going to happen, because I'm already not really worth anything. She's just a slave. But then we see, as people were praying, she is so overjoyed. So she had accepted the gospel. She had heard about Jesus, and she believed. And she went and interrupted them. A slave went to the door in the middle of the night at a dangerous time, and then she ran to interrupt all the people praying. Her mistress's guests. She's going to interrupt them. Now, Rhoda, and I really like Rhoda's name, that's why I'm saying it a lot. She was just doing her job, right? She's not some big hero. She's not a queen or a king or an apostle. But I feel like that was a risk. That's a risk to go to that door in the middle of the night, and though she was so excited, she forgot to let him in, and then run and interrupt the many people gathered in her mistress's house. So what did Rhoda have a backup? Because she took a risk. And what I think is that what most of us end up doing at different times is we settle for this backup plan of man-made, like, security, our world. It's better to stay here than to take a risk. Like, she's a slave. It's better for me to lay on this floor and be a slave than for me to take a risk and go to that door or go to that room. We like to just settle for our man-made world. Like, I can't try new things. I can't go new places. I can't be someone else. This is where I'm at. This is who I am. And it's safe because I know the rules. I know the rules. I know what I'm supposed to do. And it doesn't matter what your income is. You might have a job that you hate, but you know how to do it. You know the rules. And it's safer to stay there. It's safer than trusting God. So that backup, I don't know if I would call that complacency. I don't know if I'd call it this man-made world that we're in. Because it's easy. It's easy to not want to change your life. It's hard to trust God. I want to change my life. I want to do something. But I sure know where I'm at right now. And I understand it, and I'm comfortable, but not Rhoda. Not Rhoda. So that was a huge risk. And for us, giving up the backups, taking risks, it's just our everyday life. The risks are just putting ourselves out there. I'm not going to face decisions of, do I dig wells in Africa or do I stay here? I'm not making those kinds of decisions. Every day we decide, wow, I know this grocery gal really well. I could invite her to church. That's a risk. Having a group of friends that maybe we're quiet around because we're scared to put our faith out there or to change jobs. It's hard to trust God. Like, what do I do with this money? What do I do with my children or my grandchildren? How do I make these decisions? Taking risks is what those are all risks. There's something that we endanger, whether it's our feelings, it's our relationships, it's our comfort. We're risking something by choosing and trusting God in our everyday life. All right. But we want to be risk takers, just like the verse about faith. We want genuine faith that can be tested and proven. It doesn't melt like gold because it brings us closer to God. But we want to be risk takers. We're going to take a risk and give up the backup so we're going to review. Because taking risks brings me closer to God. And also, taking risks leads me to a transformed life. So we've talked about risks and trust and the backups that we have in our heads that are keeping us from God. So now what? How do I just take that risk? Well, I don't have a big answer. I have these nice little letters you see on your bulletin. So we're going to keep it really simple because I think simple risks sometimes to start with simple steps. The first thing I wrote is remember, the R. Remember, what's God done for you? It's not just, oh, my rent was this or there was this. What has he really done? Because he has sent Jesus to bring you into a relationship with him. We have to remember all the things that God has done for us so we can be close to him. We can also pray. It's hard to trust someone that you don't talk to. Everyone will tell you we all want better prayer time. We're all trying to pray more. But it's true. I'm not praying the way God wants to talk to me, then it's harder for me to trust him. The last one is act. Remember, pray, act. Remember who he is. He is good, and he is gracious, and he has sent the Holy Spirit to live in you. But what are those things in your life every day? 'Cause he's not just a God of rescue. He's a God of everyday, intimate relationship with you. So remembering, praying, there's no formula. Actually, there is. They have lots of little formulas you can use if you're a formula kind of direction person. But it's just talking to God because he wants to talk to you. So you can trust in him. You can also pray with other people because you're not alone. I think it's very unnatural for me to ask someone to pray for me. It just grates against my nature. But it's such a beautiful thing to be prayed for and to let someone pray for you. And then act. It's the Nike ad, just do it. Just do it. God is going to catch you. God is going to be there because he is who he says he is. So as we close today, we're getting ready to close. I want to be Rhoda. I hope you're going to be Rhoda. We don't want to be Israel. I have a song I would love for us to listen to. You might sing it. You might just read the words. You might just listen. And take that time to think about, what has God done for me? What can I thank Jesus for? We can take a moment before we close and just listen to this next song. And maybe you're a writer. You can write it on your little bulletin paper under notes. And when the song's over, we'll come back up and we'll get ready to close.